horror fan, best friends, and English nights, and welcome to the 20th episode of Murders with Mertens. I am your host, Joe, and this is a podcast about horror. Thrillers, dark comedies, body horror, the horror adjacent, the supernatural, the psychologically terrifying, scary films in general. Each episode, I sit down with a guest and discuss one of their favorite scary films so we can gush about everything that makes it just so damned cool. Viewers, thank you for your support. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you are so inclined. It all helps to get the word out and bring some much needed love to this fledgling podcast. Still got that minor goal of getting that custom URL, and it's been a slog. We're getting there slowly but surely, but I still got about another 40 subs to go. So, help or don't, do whatever you want. That's cool too. But enough of all that nonsense. Today, I have the absolute pleasure of welcoming back for his second appearance, Jose Ruckus. Brandon, how the hell are you, sir?
Good, good. I'm doing very well. I think that I found my niche as guesting on this show, which is bringing a movie that really stretches the borders of the definition of horror movie.
And that's okay. That's okay. It's such a broad genre to begin with, so that's fun, man. You chose an interesting film. We're about to dive into 1997's Funny Games, written and directed by, I think it's Michael Haneke, who
Yeah.
would go on 10 years later to do an English language remake with Naomi Watts. And I had not seen either. This is
Wow.
one of those things where I had always had intentions of seeing this film. I knew roughly what it was about, but until I really started diving in, oh no, it was one of those "Oh you sweet summer child" moments. Um, yeah, being that I have no history with this movie, what's yours?
Okay, so I watched this movie for the first time. And I couldn't remember. I think I've seen it twice before this. I seem to have memories of watching it in two different locations. But I watched it, must have been either in 2007 or 2008 on Halloween. We would have, Halloween movie marathons and stuff. We'd rent a bunch of horror movies. We rented this one because we saw the trailers. The trailers looked pretty good. We really fell for the marketing on this one. We really took the bait. And it was a really weird watch where everybody in the room was just very uncomfortable. And when the movie ended, everybody was like, what the hell did we just watch? It's probably my first exposure to actually like a postmodern work of art. Obviously, grew up watching The Simpsons and things like that push like a lot of postmodernism, a lot of stuff
Mhm.
like that in there. But those it's always done for jokes. This is very much yeah, it is more of an essay than it is a movie. And it really messed me up when I watched it the first time. It's a movie that has stuck with me really deeply. Like I said, I think I watched it one other time, but I remembered every single thing that happened in the movie. I remembered every little bit of it. And this was actually the first time watching the original German movie. So this was a bit of a new experience for me. Um, but yeah, this there's a lot to talk about with this movie.
Oh
I'm really
yeah,
excited to get into it.
yeah, there's so much that feels like very, very intentional. Every little bit. It's one of those movies where there is nothing that you are seeing or that's happening or that is said that does not have some kind of greater purpose, or there's really just nothing that's throwaway. Um
Yeah. And like when we did Mulholland Drive, we got to
yeah.
the end of that one and we were both like, it's more of a feeling than an actual thought,
It's
right? We have
vibes.
like
Yeah.
ideas about what it's about, but we're not really sure. This one, you know what it's about. Every single thing in this movie is beating you over the head with its point. And it's a movie that is really upset with you for watching it.
I think that is an incredibly fair statement. Um yeah.
Yeah.
It's yeah. I'm kind of feeling like maybe a second shower's in order today. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tough watch. Are you
It's
familiar with Michael Haneke at all? Like, have you watched any interviews
no,
with him or anything like that?
not at
Sh
all.
He's a really interesting filmmaker because he's a bit of like a zealot. There's a really famous interview with him sitting down, criticizing Spielberg for Schindler's List and
Okay.
how he feels that that Schindler's List is an unethical movie because
Mm.
specifically the scene that he brings up is the scene where they're in the showers and it's like watching, the faucet and you don't know whether water's going to come out or gas. And he says the minute you use that for entertainment value, you've you've become unethical. You're using filmmaking in an unethical manner. He says all this, and then the camera zooms out to reveal who else is on the panel of guests with him, and it's John Krasinski and what's his name? The guy who made Knocked Up, Judd Apatow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they are both so extremely uncomfortable being on this panel with him.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Oh, I gotta
Yeah,
look this up
that's a
now.
fun, yeah, you
I
gotta look that,
gotta
it's
look this
very
up.
it's very funny.
Oh, that's oh Jesus. God. Fuck. Yeah. And after seeing this movie, yeah, it's very clear what kind of guy this director is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Has he gone on to do a whole lot of other work since?
Yeah. He's done quite a few movies, and, I mean, surprisingly, this is really his only movie, I think, that's, like, a horror movie, like, he won a Golden Globe and, the Palme d'Or for The White Ribbon,
Okay, I know of it.
which is, yeah, it's a World War One movie, he's yeah, he's done, like, a lot of stuff, like, he's a really, really good director, Amore, was a big hit of his, I think.
Okay,
He's a German, like, art film director for
yeah,
the most part. The
but
Piano Teacher, I think, is one of his big ones too.
okay, okay,
Yeah,
yeah. So it's fairly prolific. That's cool. Um, I would definitely watch some of those others because I know they're going to be a very different vibe than this one.
yeah,
But yeah, no, that's interesting. Hmm.
yeah. I think they're all still quite bleak, but, a different.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. From the ones you're bringing up, sure. He's got his niche. Um, yeah. God, I got to stop watching all this bleak shit this month because yeah, I've been doing a good amount of bleak films. Um,
Yeah,
we more horror comedies maybe. Not necessarily
yeah,
dark comedies like this. It's I think we should kind of jump into it here.
yeah.
This opening, we start with the family. It's the mom and dad, Anna and Georg, and their little boy Georgie, who's probably like somewhere between, I don't know, 7 and 10 years old. I don't know little kid ages. I have an awful time with that. But they're driving off towards their vacation property. It's like a lake house, and they're towing a kind of cool old wooden sailboat. But they're playing this guessing game as they're driving along, and it's like a little taste of things to come, right?
Mhm.
Because they're playing little bit snippets of opera from random CDs that they don't let each other see before they pop into the car stereo. And if I were this kid at that age, I would be clawing my eyeballs out. Um, but when we when we cut to the title card, it shifts over to this like kind of punk metal type thing with it's not death metal because that's a very different type of screaming,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's a bit of a shock, and we just kind of linger on the characters' faces as this music plays, and we get a little bit of opening
It's
credits and so on, and
it's such a weird opening to a film.
yeah, yeah.
Very, very strange. Do you think that like the opening shots, like the helicopter shots of the car, do you think that's like an intentional nod to The Shining?
I think it very well could be. Um, yeah, because that's definitely iconic from that film. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's again everything intentional, right?
Yeah.
Um, hmm. It just makes me think even more about this film, which is great. That's why you're here. Um, but yeah, they're nearing their destination and this lake house, and they stop at the gate of their neighbor to say hello and ask for a hand because they want to launch the boat. And by all means, impose on your neighbor to do that instead of having your kid and your wife help. But whatever. And they notice that they're out there practicing on the lawn with their golf clubs. They had planned an outing the next day to go golfing, and they see a couple of young men that they don't recognize with them, and the conversation's super stiff and awkward. And they kind of
Yeah.
think nothing of it. Georgie, he notices that their little girl Sissy isn't there. He thinks that's weird, but they're like, yeah, she's probably at the house or down by the lake, whatever. Um, and yeah, they just continue on. Okay, cool. Uh, they they pull into home, and this fucking dog,
Yep.
this dog that gets out of the car with them, Ralphie, is fucking huge.
Yeah, it's a big like German Shepherd.
Yeah, something like that. And oh my god, this dog is massive. And okay, okay. I'm thinking to myself as this film is going along, you can kind of see where it's going. Um, like, really? The dog didn't, yeah, no, didn't even try. Okay, guess not. We'll get there.
Yeah.
um, but Fred, the neighbor, comes by with Paul to help them launch the boat, and well, he introduces Paul, the one of the young men. Um, and they say he's the son of a business associate, and you notice right away they don't get their story straight as far as when Paul got there.
Yep.
They're talking about how, oh yeah, he came up Friday. No, it was yesterday, or something like that. Oh yes, yesterday. And again, very stiff. And you notice right away that what's with the gloves, Paul? Um, and
Well,
oh,
Paul is dominating the conversation. Like when the guy
oh yeah,
goes to introduce him, Paul like steps says, "My name's Paul." Like he doesn't
hmm
let anybody take control of the conversation.
yep. And that'll also come back again later. And the gloves, it's the more you think about it, there's like all sorts of different ways you can read the gloves. Uh, they could be, just okay with what these kids are doing. They're wearing gloves to, keep from leaving fingerprints, but also, um, there's a moment a bit later where Paul keeps telling his buddy Peter or calling his buddy Peter by Tom, and it doesn't come into focus why he's calling him Tom until much later in the film when Peter calls Paul Jerry.
Hmm.
And it's like super clear. It's like a nod to cartoon characters and their gloves at a certain point.
Yeah.
Um, and it's just unsettling too. They're like, yeah.
The look of the golf clothes with the gloves, the
Hmm.
super short shorts. It's got a weird vibe to it.
Very weird. Yes. So again, what's with the gloves, Paul? Uh, Georgie down when they're launching the boat, he's moaning about not seeing his friend Fred's daughter, and she said she was going to be there, and the dad's like, "Hey, kid, she's probably at a friend's or whatever. We'll ask them tomorrow, but come on, we got boat shit to do." Um, so at this point, I think we cut back up to the house, and this is where we've got the mom, Anna. Uh, she's on the phone with a friend. She's feeding the dog, working on dinner. She's got all this fucking steak for some reason, like 3 pounds of fillets. Sign me up. That sounds great. But she's working on cutting this stuff up, and as I'm watching her work in the kitchen, I'm like, food safety is not on this lady's mind. Not that red meat is the most dangerous of raw food, but um, there's other stuff that happens in a few beats that it's like, yeah, you're not even washing your hands. You're like manhandling that fridge handle. There's all sorts of shit going on. This kitchen's gross, dude.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but I don't know why that stuck out to me so
Because
intensely, but it did. So I gotta bring it up. Um, but Georgie steps in. He asks for a knife for his dad. I I guess they're cutting some rope. I don't know what they're doing. I'm more of a power boater than a sailboater. I don't know the shit, but mom's like, here you go. Make sure he brings it back. And he steps away, comes back in a little minute. Looking a little nervous. Well, it's because there's this young man at the door. And this is Peter. Um, Peter needs eggs.
yes, he does.
Okay. Just kind of moseys his way on in. And, well, they have some awkward conversation about how he got into the property. He's like, oh, yeah, there's a hole in the fence. Fred showed me. Your neighbor, Fred. You remember Fred? Fred. Because I think we glossed over the fact that they also have a great big gate to the front of the property at the
Hmm.
road, and everything's like extra secure looking here. And she's like, "Oh, but your clothes didn't get wet." Yeah, because I didn't come through the water. No, I got through the hole in the gate. So, but again, super awkward conversation. He doesn't even know what the eggs are for. He's just like, "Hey, we just got to borrow some eggs, and you got a whole dozen there, so we're good." And she finally just hands him these eggs that he goes to carry off, and off camera he drops them, um ostensibly fucking around with the door or something like that, right? And uh again with the food safety. Because she's bringing in some towels, she's just dropping shit into the dog's bowl as an easy method of getting stuff. She's not really like cleaning it so much as just mashing the eggs into the grout of the tile.
Yeah.
It's good times, right? Um, but she cleans things up, and Peter talks about being clumsy and so on, and then uses that as an excuse to knock her cell phone into the sink. And she's like, okay, before you destroy the rest of my kitchen, is there anything else I can do for you? Right. And he asks for another 4 eggs, and they kind of get into this whole thing. Um, but she relents, gives him the eggs, bundles him up, kicks his ass out of the kitchen. She sparks up a cigarette, and the dog's been barking for a minute. Um, and that's just kind of in the background. You're not really paying attention to it quite so much.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, you hear this, excuse me. Okay. And now there's 2 of them inside the house. You got Peter and Paul, and the dog's kind of at the screen door. And they're, pretending to be afraid of the dog, right? They're trapped by this vicious dog who's actually just friendly, she says, and probably just wants to play. She shoos the dog away. But now that they're both in here, she can't get them out.
Yeah, that's one of the really uncomfortable things that that they go about with these characters is the way that they insist themselves upon the family. They and like the way they escalate this scene as we go through it, where it starts off with just, oh, we're asking for eggs, and then he drops the eggs, and then he insists, like, he manipulates her into giving him something seemingly innocuous, just more eggs, but they're able to ramp up this into essentially an excuse to do violence on the family. It is very gross, and yeah,
Yeah.
it's
And it's just like weaponizing being polite and yeah. Um Paul introduces himself, and soon after she shoos the dog away, he totally changes the subject in admiring their golf clubs. And well, he would love to be able to check
yeah.
them. And he
He's got
just
that nice Callaway Big Bertha driver there. Gotta
mm-hmm.
gotta try
Mm-hmm.
that thing out.
Yeah, he's like, "Don't worry, no, I'm just, gonna, drive towards the water. We're good, right?" And it basically, without being told it's okay, just goes ahead and starts grabbing shit. Um, and he goes and steps outside, and you're left with super uncomfortable Anna and Peter still inside. Um, and the barking just continues,
Mm.
and you got Georg and Georgie down at the boat, and Georg is yelling at the dog. Georgie's even yelling at the dog. All of a sudden, you hear a yelp and a couple of half-hearted barks, and all's quiet. The look on the kid's face,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
yeah.
You can infer what happened.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And Dad doesn't exactly seem overly concerned, but the kid's got a good sense of, bad shit happening throughout this
Yeah.
movie. Um, so they get up, go to walk back to the house, and you very intentionally see the knife left in the boat. It even gets knocked over, down
Hmm.
in, yeah, off of the little ledge that it was on. Um, and okay, again, everything intentional. As they make their way back up to the house, we cut back in, and Anna's just trying to get these boys to leave, and they're refusing, but also requesting those remaining 4 eggs. Hey, you already said you're going to the store on Monday. It's cool, You're not using them. You already said you're not going to cook them for any breakfast, so okay. Uh, she's getting incredibly uncomfortable. She's asking them to leave. Finally, you get her husband stepping in, and he's like, "Okay, well, what's going on? What's so bad? Just we can give him the eggs." And she's like, "Fuck this! I'm out of here." It's like, "You're
She
not
can't
backing me up."
explain why she's so upset with these guys, because
Uh huh.
when you put it into words, it's
It's
like, well,
silly.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
silly, yeah, but, like, you having seen the entire thing, you understand why she's so upset, but,
Oh
yeah,
yes.
she can't explain to her husband, like, "Yeah, get these guys out of here."
Yup. And yeah. Uh, Georg is at a certain point, they start pushing back a little bit, and he's like, "Enough of this shit, get out." And then Paul kind of jokes about, busting his balls there, and
Mm,
Georg slaps him. He's just kind of laughing, and then kind of behind them, Peter picks up that driver, and he goes Last of Us Part Two on him.
yep,
Yep.
slams it into his knee.
Yup, that can't feel great. And then so Anna finally comes back in at this point. I, as much as I understand she's upset and she just wants them out, and she's kind of probably a little embarrassed by the situation as well. Um, just hearing all the conversation and everything, I feel like I would have come right back in. But yeah, the commotion finally draws her back in, and you get Georgie rather, trying to intervene with his little 8-year-old self, and they're throwing him off, and she comes back into the room finally, and Paul's just like, "He slapped me," and Peter's like, "Yeah, he started it."
Yeah, it's very the way that they phrase it of just like, "Oh, well, you left us no choice. Why did you slap me?" We had to like, yeah, we
Yeah.
escalated it, but yeah, you started it.
Hmm. Yeah. Golf club still definitely not warranted, but sure. Um, he started it, yes, and things will certainly escalate from here. Now this is where we start getting Paul going back and forth, calling Peter Peter, and then sometimes Tom. Um, and not having seen this before, I was kind of thinking to myself, okay, now I know it could just be a subtitle thing where it's a fuck up somewhere in there, but no, you actually hear him say Tom. It's
Yep.
very clear he's calling him Tom. And I'm glad they finally went somewhere with that because that was confusing the hell out of me. I was first thinking, okay, so Paul and Peter are quite likely aliases anyways, but it could just be them slipping into another one from some other thing that they did before or whatever. No, it has definitely a cartoony focus, and there's another one of those that'll come up later.
Yep.
um um so yeah, they get the injured Georg into a chair, and they kind of taunt him about checking the injury. About, oh, take your pants off. Take your pants off.
Yeah.
Paul studies medicine. It's he can take a look and see if he can help you out here. But at a certain point, it's like, okay, we can do three things here. We can check the injury, we can call an ambulance, or we can call the police. And this is the point where Anna reveals, well, Peter knocked the cell phone into the sink, and
Mhm.
we got it in a bag of rice right now. No, it's just her purse. But yeah.
They're always presenting themselves as this like, oh well yeah, you can call the cops if you want to. Yeah, we don't care.
Hmm.
Like knowing that they can't call the cops. It's
Yes. They even, I feel like they even offer to leave at certain points. It's just,
yeah.
but yeah, cell phone went in the sink. Paul suggests, well, how about we play a guessing game? And this is the first, real little game that they present. Uh, and it's like, what's this? Holds up the golf ball. And okay, Jorg's like, that's a golf ball, dude. You're right. It's a golf ball. And what was I doing outside? Well, if I didn't hit this golf ball. So, yes, Anna finally infers that, okay, you did something to the dog. And they go outside for a round of hot and cold,
Yep.
which is a game that always just irritates the shit out of me anyways. It's it's not fun. It's But especially when you're looking for your dead dog, it's really not fun.
Yeah.
Um and this is where we get that first wink at the camera. I don't think there was anything else before this scene that really broke the fourth wall or introduced the audience as a real participant.
I believe I think Paul looks at the camera once, but just
Okay.
briefly. But
So it's
yeah,
one of
this
those
is
blink and you miss it type things.
yeah, I think so.
Okay.
But this is one of the first real bits of genius that this movie does. One, the way the shot's composed is really, really great because
Oh
it's the
yeah.
shot of the car, and then Paul walks into frame, turns around, winks at the camera, and the wink is very, very purposeful into like what this movie's like actually about. Because it's very easy. I think the first time I watched it, I didn't really think about it too much about like you know movies break the fourth wall sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Just for fun sometimes. This one, the fourth wall breaks in it are very intentional to the theme of the movie because what it's asking you to do is consider your role as the audience in the actions of the movie. And so as they're going and searching for the dead dog, Paul turns to you and winks because this is fun. We're having fun. This is what you came. You came to watch a
Mm-hmm.
movie. You came to be entertained by this.
Yep. Look, Damien, it's all for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think when he turns his head back to Anna, this is where he finally tells her hot, and she opens up the door and the dog just slumps out.
Yep.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Uh we're back with Peter, and he's just minding Jorg and Georgie, and he asks for something to eat while they wait. Kid gets up to oblige, tells him, hey, don't think of grabbing a knife or something. It's okay. And then back outside, We have friends of Anna's and Georg's that are pulling up to the dock on their boat, and you get that moment of control that you talked about again,
Mm-hmm.
where Paul's going to dominate. And instead of him just being like, okay, you know, we got to play it cool here, right? No, he's just like, I know you're thinking what I'm thinking.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, I am thinking that you are thinking that you're going to get some help now, but I also know that you know that I know, and that we're going to play it cool because otherwise everyone's going to die. Um, and yeah, she manages to pull her shit together and they play it relatively cool. He introduces himself to their friends, and again, like you said, just kind of putting himself out there right away, just
Yep.
controlling things so he's able to introduce who he is, and she doesn't have an opportunity to fuck it up.
And he also, at the end of the conversation, asks the other group of people, "Oh, where are you guys staying? Where's your guys' house at?"
Yeah, yeah. That's very noticeable as well. Um, this is where somebody finally brings up the gloves, and he's like, "Oh, I
Mm,
just have eczema."
yeah,
Yeah, okay. And she's like, "Well, the waters are very healing around here. You take a dip." And he's like, "Oh, thanks for the tip." Um, yeah, I'm glad that they only pulled up to just talk briefly about future plans, and they didn't try to come up to the house or anything.
yeah,
Um, I think it's definitely a direction this film could have gone in, without too many problems or anything. But I like that it's more just a little bit more contained.
yeah,
Um, but yes, back at the house, and Anna and Georgie are trying to move Dad to the couch, and she tries to get the boys to believe that they have company coming. But Peter's like, "No, I heard the end of your conversation. They were going to call back if they were thinking of coming along." And well, phone's dead, so they're never going to call. So there you go.
yeah.
Um,
Another thing I'd like to point out here is like the moving of Jorg to the couch is just such a grueling process.
mhm.
And when you think the only thing that's happened is a guy's been hit with a golf club.
Yeah,
Which as far as, like, movie violence goes, it's very, very little of a thing to have happened, and especially, like, in a movie, like a horror movie or an action movie, you would expect, like, the hero can get shot and get through the rest of the movie just fine. John McClane can run across broken glass at the
right.
beginning of the movie and make it through the entire thing with no problems. A guy has been hit in the knee with a golf club, and it's going to be a problem for the entire movie.
Yeah. Yeah, there's like a torn meniscus or something like that.
Yeah.
It's not good. It's not good. Um but yeah, you're right. These are not heroes. These are everyday people, and they're making
Mhm.
it very clear. Um and again, the whole audience participation thing, it's very much telling you, "Oh, hey, you wanted this, right? Well,
Yeah.
now you're going to see what happens."
Yeah.
Um mm. So, Anna goes off to the kitchen at this point. And I love Peter. He's always the buffer, stopping Georgie from going along, or, keeping people from being able to gang up in any way. Um, but this is where they've already been having this conversation about them being extra informal with them all of a sudden. How Georg is calling them boys. And it's like, hey, that's great. We're getting to know each other. And so Paul decides to formally introduce Peter to Georg. And it's at this point where Anna comes back in with some water and some pain meds for her husband. And this is where Paul and Peter lose their shit on him, or on them rather, for being so impolite, just brushing off Peter, because they throw her onto the couch and that fucks up his leg. And then Peter's stomping on Peter's leg.
Yeah.
There's a good amount of pain here. Uh,
Yeah.
and I think this is where Anna finally has a meltdown, like you do in these situations. And Paul threatens Georgie with violence towards his mother if he doesn't behave. And he's like smacking this kid on the floor. That kid's head is bouncing off the floor while this is happening, too. So, yeah, I think the meltdown's pretty warranted. And here's where we get more games in the way that Paul and Peter are spinning a little tale as to why Peter does this and why they're here. And we get some real crocodile tears as we get the story about, a drug addicted family and bad divorce and all this horrible stuff. And it basically devolves into laughter because none of it's true.
Yep.
And
Then he reveals another fake story that's not
yeah,
true.
yeah, it's just,
And another.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's very Joker in the Dark Knight, right? You have no idea how he ever got his scars, but every story is very interesting, but
Yeah.
ultimately
And
pointless.
the way that he presents it in this one is like, well, which one's going to be the most interesting for you? Like narratively, which one's better for you? Is it that we're super, are we Patrick Bateman? Are we super rich people who are just nihilists and want to
Yeah, are we
kill
just
people?
bored?
Or yeah, like what makes it seem better for you? What's a better narrative?
Hmm. And this is the point where Georg he's not having it. And he's like, okay, I get it. Paul's like, oh, hey, he gets it.
He
Hey,
gets it.
Tubby. This is where he starts calling Peter Tubby for the rest of the film. It's like, come on, he's got a couple extra pounds on him, but he's not fat. Uh, but yeah, the whole he gets it. Oh, check it out, he gets it bit. And this is where it's like, okay, time to get down to brass tacks. Let's present the bet.
Yep.
Either you're gonna die before 9 a.m. or you're gonna be alive. At which point, we're probably gonna have to kill you anyways because you're gonna just tell the cops. But let's just make that bet. And it's like, huh? As far as the family is concerned, they're
Yep.
just they're just having their good time, Paul and Peter. But yeah.
Well, and then
And then
the family they reject it, like they don't want to
yeah,
participate.
they
He's
don't
like,
want to
well,
play.
no, there has to be a bet. And then he turns to the audience, and
Mm-hmm.
he makes the bet with the audience. Well, you're
Yeah.
on their side, right? So you think they're going to make it? What do you think?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Um and let's see here. Yes, he asks us that, and then we get the Tom and Jerry bit. That's
Yep.
where where Peter finally calls Paul Jerry, and it's like, okay, this makes more sense. They are very much cartoon characters in every sense at this point.
Yeah.
Um,
It's a reference to like the overall theme of the movie because it's about, violence in media and how that
mhm,
affects people and stuff. And like, oh, well, what's the cartoon that you show to little kids? Oh, Tom and Jerry, that super violent cartoon.
It's yeah, the whole point of Itchy and Scratchy, right?
Yep.
Um, so yeah. Um, Tom and Jerry get it. Check. So they unsettle Anna with some comments about, Peter and then whether he would find her attractive. And okay, well, let's play kitten in a bag with Georgie. And they throw this pillowcase over this kid's head, and the kid has an absolute freak out moment, which I mean, can you blame him?
Yeah.
And they use this as an opportunity to force Anna to strip for Peter. Which thankfully they were tasteful enough not to have to show this to the
It's
audience.
it's done so well where all you get is it's just close-ups on people's faces while it goes
Hmm.
down. And everybody, all the characters that you're rooting for are crying. They're super uncomfortable. They're
Georgie keeps
terrified.
screaming from time to time
Yeah.
because he doesn't want this to happen to his mother, and
And
yeah.
even when they show Peter and Paul, they're not like, it's almost like they're barely there. Like they're just
Hmm.
like they're not like lusting after her or whatever. It's more
No,
about that they're putting her through that. That's what it's
yeah,
about. And
they're just enjoying their control.
I think this is also like a point in the movie where they want to like sort of offer a question to the audience of like, a lot of times in horror movies when there's like an assault scene or something like that, the director will still make sure you get to see the victim naked. You get to see
Hmm.
boobs. That's big in a horror movie. Got to have
Oh yeah.
that. And so this is sort of asking the question to the audience like, why do you want to watch that?
Yeah.
Why do you want to watch that? Are you upset that you didn't get to see her naked right now? What does that say about you?
Hmm. Hmm. This film is definitely a nice little mirror for audiences.
Yep.
Um, yeah. So Paul compliments her, how she's got not an ounce of fat on her, and basically tells her to get dressed. And at this point, Georgie, well, he pisses himself because he's so scared about the situation. And his folks kind of leap to his defense as the boys were about to cart him off to go deal with this. Well, they were not about to have them take their son away without them. Um, and in the kerfuffle, Georgie manages to run upstairs and climb out his
Mhm.
bedroom window and escape, right? At this point, Paul, he's wrapping Anna's legs with packing tape because, enough of this nonsense. And I think Jorg is on the floor at this point. They knocked him out.
Yeah.
'Cause there's that comment about splashing water on his face, but don't fuck up the rug. Um, yeah. So Georgie tries to scale the gate, but he can't quite make it because he's a friggin' 8-year-old. And it's probably good that he didn't. Otherwise, he'd end up like what's his butt in the 2018 Halloween.
Oh, yeah.
Um, oof. So he goes to take the water route around to the neighbors, and we've got the couple of planes of action of Paul going to check on Georgie, and he makes this comment about entertainment value of all
Yep.
of this. I don't remember the exact line, but again, it's that are you enjoying yourselves? Are you
Yeah.
liking this? It's no, no. I'm
No,
I'm unsettled.
I'm
It's
really not. And
I'm
like
very
the other thing
uncomfortable.
is this scene is where some of the majority of the violence happens, right? Like they beat the shit out of George again, they beat the shit out of Anna. And it almost all happens off screen. Like you hear them like beating up the parents while George is
Yep.
running up the stairs and climbing out the window and stuff. But you actually really never see a lot of violence in
Yeah. There's a lot of off-screen stuff in this movie. Just the
Yeah.
dropping
There's
of
the
the eggs, the
big
sneaking of
one coming
Paul, and
soon
yeah,
that we're going to really talk about.
yep. So let's see here. Georgie, he makes it to the neighbor's yard, and just as he comes up to the house, the motion lights turn on, and it spooks him a little bit because he's obviously terrified about the situation,
Yeah.
and
Well,
he
it's also
happens.
it's gonna give away where he's running to.
Yep. He turns behind and sees Paul coming up from the water as well. So he runs up to the house. Um, at this point, Peter goes to check on the eggs uh, for some reason, and the couple they try to break free, but of course he comes back right away. To fuck with them a little bit more. Um, and Georgie has hidden himself inside the neighbor's house, but as the lights flip on, he realizes, crap, I got wet pants and wet shoes, and I'm leaving footprints everywhere. So he takes off his shoes and his pants, and he hears Paul in the house, and he decides to go hide in a different room or whatever because he's got his trail leading right to him. Um, and Paul stalks him. It's at this point where Georgie looks over and he sees a gun in a doorway, and as he approaches it, sees the legs of Sissy in a bathroom.
Yep.
And again, off screen, and we don't see the full body and all of that. Um, Again, tasteful, and also, like you said, hey, do you want to see the body?
Yeah. Yeah.
Should we go take a
What?
look?
Yeah. This movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Dead kids.
Yeah. Oh, this isn't the only one, right? So Georgie picks up the gun and he goes and runs and hides in a closet, and you know he's watching the shadow of Paul move around the room from under the door. I love that kind of shit.
Mhm.
And Paul very clearly knows that he's in the room, and it's like, hey, let's put on a little music. And it's the weird metal from the
Yep,
beginning
it's
of
the
the film,
same song.
because of course it is. Um, and I think that Georgie thinks that he's left the room or something, because he comes out of the closet there and back into this hallway, and that's where Paul steps back into the hallway, because clearly he was just, waiting for him to come back out. And they go through the little, okay, well, you got to cock the gun. All right. So go ahead
Yep.
and do that. And he does very timidly, and he just keeps walking up to him, and he's like, you also have to pull the trigger. And of course, it's not loaded, or at least the shells that were in it were spent. But
Or
yep,
maybe something else too. We don't know. You never find out.
yeah, yeah.
There's some weird stuff happens later in this movie. Who knows what
Oh,
happened?
this is also true. Yeah. And we'll get there, but but you're right. This could just be some lovely magical storytelling here at this point, right? Um, so we are back at the house where Peter is channel surfing.
Yep.
He's watching some hurricane coverage. That feels super topical.
Yep.
And this is where Paul and Georgie return. He just crumples into his mother because he's seen Sissy's body and he's a wreck. And this is where we get our other cartoon character moment, because, oh, hey, look, I brought the gun. And got a couple of shells here, one for Beavis and one for Butthead. And then we get the iconic. Yeah. And at this point, Paul decides just to go for a snack after he leaves Peter in charge of the
Well,
gun, playing the little
he tells him
game
to,
of,
yeah, he gives them a new game to play, which is they're going to
yeah.
kill one of them. They pick Anna's age, which they think is about 35 or
Mm-hmm.
37, and to count 1, 2, 3, 4, and
Mm-hmm.
you know eliminate them, and then whoever's left gets killed.
Yeah. Super fun for
Yeah.
everyone. Um, and again, with everything happening off screen, because Paul goes into the kitchen, he grabs a bunch of shit from the fridge, he hears kerfuffle, but he just kind of continues making a
Yeah.
sandwich up until the point where we cut back to the TV with the racing that was still on there, and there's blood all
Well,
over it
we
in the
we
wall
hear
behind.
a gunshot while he's still
Right.
in the kitchen. And then
Yep.
and yeah, he's still going about his business, making
Yeah,
the
he's got
sandwich.
that nice Kerrygold butter. Some
You
tasty
hear
stuff there.
people crying,
Hmm.
sobbing, and then he walks back in. And well,
I think
actually, he
I
walks
think
off
there's even a few
camera.
glances, yeah, during
He
all
walks
this.
off camera. We stay in the kitchen. We hear the conversation of like, "Oh, why'd you kill the kid? You're not supposed to kill the kid.
Mhm.
There's no tension if you kill the kid."
Right, right. Once again, talking to the audience as well as each other. Um,
Okay, so this scene, right, there's just so much to talk about with this scene, 'cause this is where the movie really, really gets going with the things that it's doing. One, like we said, all the violence is off screen. You don't ever even get, like, you see the kid dead on the ground, but you never see, like, you don't see his head blown off or anything like that. You just see the legs
yeah,
there,
because
like
it's a
you saw
little
with it.
bit behind the TV stand.
Yeah.
You just, and also you see Georg's legs sticking out from under behind the couch. So you're not 100 what happened to him, because he's not moving. But you've got Anna just sitting there weeping.
Frozen for
Just,
like
yeah.
just what feels like hours.
Oh, this is such a long take. It
Yeah.
it does not stop. It's
Yeah. But like the conversation that they have of like, "Oh, well, now we can't do anything with him. You ruined the tension of the movie. You're not supposed to kill the kid first."
mhm. Mhm.
This and this is going to come back quite a few times as we go here. This is where you get really into the deep postmodern stuff, where this movie begins to break rules you didn't know you had agreed to. The tension of a movie like this is, well, how are they going to protect the kid? The kid's got to get away, right? The parents sacrifice themselves, and the kid gets away. But no, they kill the kid first.
Yep.
Also, it's if you really think about it, you're like, where he's upset that they kill the kid first. But when you think about it, when we go back, they kill the kid first with the last house that they were at too.
Also true.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, and then just like a lot of the time in horror movie, you show up for the kills, right?
Hmm.
Like you go see a Friday the 13th, you go see Nightmare on Elm Street. You're there for the kills. You want to see what inventive ways they're going to kill people as. That's part of the fun of a horror movie. Um this movie, when a character has finally died, the entire movie just stops to make you feel what the death of a person feels like. Because
Yeah.
these two parents just lost their kid. And for the next like 5 to 6 minutes, it's just frozen on them sobbing
Hmm. She
forever.
finally gets up and she goes over and just kind of looks at her son and just turns around and uses the edge of the TV stand to try to cut through the tape with her,
Well, no,
her arms
she
behind her.
turns off the TV
Oh
because
no, that's yeah, that's right. Yep.
the entire time that this race has been going on, this car
Hmm.
race that they're watching, and like so the movie has no non-diegetic sound. There's no score or anything apart from at the beginning and at the end. So like
Hmm.
this like car race, this like grinding, like really loud noise sort of is like providing the soundtrack for the scene. And yeah, it's just this really loud, really annoying grating, and eventually she just gets up and turns it off. It's This scene is just like a major just gut punch. It's man.
Yep. Yep. She gets back up, walks on over, checks on Georg, and he starts moving a little bit. So okay, he's alive. She goes out to the kitchen to look for a knife to free them, and he starts breaking down.
He loses it.
He loses his shit. And rightly so, right?
Yeah.
But oh my god, when you talk about the scene being a gut punch, just hearing his cries and his wails and her trying to comfort him when obviously she's going through the same thing, but she's being mom to him in a way, right? Um uh Again, very long scene,
Yeah,
very uncomfortable.
part of because like when I put this movie on Twitter, which kind of got this episode going, was I said I think this is like one of the scariest movies ever made, one of the most horrifying movies ever. And I think there are a lot of people who, if they watched it, would be like, "What the hell are you talking about? Like, you barely see anything. There's no jump scares. There's nothing like that. There's none of this stuff. This is the stuff that makes this movie so scary. Is
Yeah,
that it's
it's very real life. It's
you don't see the violence, but you feel it so much more than any other movie because there's this amount of empathy to the characters. You really don't want to see bad stuff happen to them because it feels like something bad happening to somebody that you know. Like it feels
mhm.
like this is like it feels like you're literally watching somebody's kids die.
Yeah. And in many ways, like we talked about earlier, it feels like you are the participant. You are what is driving this. You're making this happen by being the
Mhm.
audience.
Yeah.
So yeah. Um, I can imagine feeling pretty bad about that because I did.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, they kind of hatch a plan for Anna to go get help at the inn down the road or whatever. And because his injuries are just way too much for them to try to go together because continuing this super long take is her getting him up and
Mhm.
trying to help him to the kitchen, and it goes on
Yeah.
for, I mean, you said this whole take is probably 5-6 minutes. No, it's probably closer to
If
10
yeah,
when you
if
include
you
all of
continue,
this.
yeah, it goes
Oh,
on, and, like, yeah, like we said
mm,
earlier, there's no dignity to, like, the violence in this movie. Like, he is just he can't move. His knee is
yeah, his arms fucked
swollen,
up
it's
too.
bleeding,
Yeah.
it's like
Yep.
that's
Yeah.
that's what violence looks like in real life.
Yeah. Yeah. It's yeah, like you talk about action heroes, they take, several bullets over the course of the film and they keep on trucking. But then, you turn around and you get in the late 90s a super fun taste of realism with like Rainbow Six, for example.
Yeah.
How basically one hit, somebody's down.
Yep.
You take one hit, you are down, and you're not there for the rest of the game.
Yep.
That
If
character is done.
if you get hit in the knee with a golf club, if you don't get that wound treated, it's going to be a real problem for you.
Mhm. I love how he says he's going to hide in the wine cellar, and she's like, "How are you gonna get down there?" And he's like, "I'm gonna figure it out. I just need you to
Yeah.
go."
He is
And
just trying to get her out of the house.
mhm.
He's just like, "Please get out of here."
Yeah, get some clothes on, get some shoes because you're probably gonna have to run at some point. And she goes to run upstairs, and he reminds her, "Oh, we never took the bags upstairs. We never even got that far."
Yep.
And so she goes to open up one of their bags and grabs a pair of jeans and the oddest sweater choice. Um,
Yeah, just like a sweater vest.
yeah, it's weird being that that's all she has on,
Ah,
but
it's Germany, man. I don't know.
I guess. Um, but yeah, then she goes for some, I can't remember. Um, I think they just thought that they left, but also why are we trying to go out the kitchen window when the door is right next to it?
They've got like the doors jammed up or whatever. They can't get out the doors,
Oh, okay.
and then they assume
I
like, oh well, they
missed that.
yeah. And they're
Okay.
like, they probably locked the gate too, so you're going to have to go around. You're gonna have to cut
Yeah,
your way out.
get some pliers and you're gonna have to cut through the fence and um okay. So when she goes to her bag, before she climbs through the window, she thinks about the cell phone, she grabs it, it turns on. Okay, well, I guess
Mhm.
it dried out. So hey, I guess we're gonna try this first. Well, who do we call? Well, you're gonna call the police, but what's the number? Okay.
Yeah, this was a bit that was confusing to me. Like, is there not like an emergency
Yeah,
line
there's
in?
most other countries have some version of 911. It's or just dialing for the operator. And I also understand that your kid just got blown away in front of you.
Yeah,
You've been through a
yeah,
horribly traumatic experience, and you're probably not exactly thinking straight either at this point. Um, you've been through a lot.
yeah.
Uh, he's like, no, just speed dial number 4. It's my friend Peter.
Well, that's one thing. It's a cell phone, so maybe you can't. They can't dial out to an operator on a '90s cell phone.
I I seem to remember being able to, but
I don't know. It's
shit.
Germany. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. But they try calling Peter and it doesn't go through for some reason. And they're like, well, maybe it's still wet. Hey, let's get a hair dryer. This goes on forever.
Yep.
Um, and again, just making this feel like real life. And they are going through some shit. And we, as the audience, are making them go through some shit. And all right, you want to see them try to escape in all this? This is how they're going to do it. You're going to watch that happen.
Yeah.
Um,
This is not movie world. They're not going to, set up a bunch of traps for when they come back and
right.
fight back or anything. No, he's gonna sit in a chair with a blow dryer and try to dry off his cell phone. That's the best he can do.
Yep. Yep. And he's going to snack on some of the shit that Paul left out too while he's at it. But yeah, she drags his chair in there so he can sit and work on the phone while she runs and tries to find help, outside. Um, so let's see. At this point, she just stops by. I think it's their next door neighbors, Fred. The people from earlier in the film, and like screams at the house through the gate, but nothing because obviously they're all dead inside. Um, and we cut back to Georg. He's working with the blow dryer, nibbling on some shit, and he puts it together, gives it a try again, is able to get a hold of Peter, but they can't really understand each other. And he
Yeah.
keeps telling them to call the police and whatever, but then the call drops or whatever. And then he tries one more time, and then the battery runs out. And then we get back to Anna running along the road and trying to get up to the next house. And then she sees a car coming and she's freaked out. So she hides. She hides a little too long because she's not able to flag down this vehicle.
Yeah,
And then we're
I think her like what she's trying to do is trying to see if it's the boys in the car before she asks for
right.
help.
But that being said, she's a little slow at that and she's not able to get this car flag down. And then another car is approaching. Well, they cut away from that, and we all know what that means.
Yep.
We're back with Georg. He's taking a blanket and covering his son's body. And he turns around when this golf ball rolls into the doorway from the hallway. And he's staring at this thing like, no, no. And Paul steps into frame. And then Peter and a tied up Anna. She is looking rough at this point.
Yep.
So they get them back on the couch, and we get the commentary about giving something to the audience, and
Yeah. It's not dramatic if they don't have a chance to escape.
right. And the turn to the camera, when they're talking. Well, is it Anna or is it Georg that tells them, "Hey, this is enough. This is enough," and Paul's like, "Is it? Is that enough?" Looks
Yeah.
at the camera.
He's
Is
like, well,
that enough?
we're not even at feature length yet.
Yeah. Yeah. We got to give the people what they want here. So now it's time for a new game where Anna gets to choose who's next and if it's the gun or this other little tool that York brought for them. Oh, look, we have a knife.
Yep.
And obviously it's a choice that she does not want to make. But they kind of force her into things. There's you know what? How about if you say a prayer? And if you say it just so perfectly, then we're not just going to end this now and we're going to give you that choice again. We're going to take that choice away from you. We're going to give you the opportunity to earn that choice. She's like, I don't know any prayers. And he's like, you don't know any prayers? He doesn't know any prayers? Yeah, well, Peter, you know any prayers? He's like, no. Like, shit, nobody knows any prayers. He knows this one little snippet of a prayer, which, they repeat to her. And she tries to say it, and she's like, no, you don't pray like that. Come on. Come on. You got to earn this. You got to get on your knees like you're talking to God. And it's very unsettling.
Yeah.
That's the point. But
they're so miserable scenes. It's hard to watch.
Yeah. Well, she makes it through and she's able to grab for the gun at a certain point, and she pauses for a beat and blows Peter the fuck away. And you get blood splatter all over Paul. He can't believe what's happened. And he wrestles the gun away from her at this point and immediately he starts asking where the remote is.
Yep.
And it's like, oh, it's going this way. Okay. And as soon as he finds it, things start rewinding.
Yeah.
And back a lot more than you think they necessarily would, because you hear a lot of the conversation about prayer again. Um, but this
This
time,
this is a
oh,
scene that when I watched it for the first time, it blew my fucking mind. Like, it's the wildest shit I had ever seen in a movie at that point. Like,
yep.
and it makes it to where you as the audience know there's nothing to be done here.
Mm-hmm.
They can't lose.
Mm-hmm.
These people are going to die. There is it's over. These are not people that are in this world.
Nope, they are cartoon characters who are in complete control of everything. Um, so this time when she grabs for the gun, he's ready for her and he's just able to wrestle it away.
Mhm.
Um, and well, it's time to start counting again. And
Well, no, he tells what is he said you broke the rules, right? You
yes,
broke
I'm
the
sorry.
rules, so we're going to kill George.
Yep, yep, and they do. Um, but I'm pretty sure that happens off screen again.
Yep. You don't see it.
Um, yep, I don't even know that we hear the gunshot. Um,
I think we did.
it doesn't matter if we do, really,
Yep.
um, because now they're all in their rain gear and they're going down to the boat. Morning has definitely broken, and they're climbing aboard, and we get this. We get this fun little conversation about um, matter and antimatter and
They're discussing a science fiction story one of them had read or
uh-huh.
whatever or seen on TV. And yeah, it's about how like the scientist makes two worlds and one of the worlds is reality and one of the worlds is fiction and he gets stuck in the world that's fiction. Yeah.
Makes sense. Very, very
Yeah.
suitable for this film too. Um, and we had that glimmer of hope, right? Early on in
Mhm.
the film with the knife that was left in the boat. And in clear view of Paul and Peter, here's Anna trying to saw away at the ropes around her wrists. And they're like, oh, check that out. And Peter just gets up, picks it up, flips it overboard.
Yep.
It's like,
It's
eh.
again the movie is breaking the rules of what a movie does. You plan
Mm-hmm.
payoff. This movie goes, "Oh, we planted it." And you sat there and you watched the entire thing. We're going to take that away from you too.
Yeah. Yes, we are. And now you're gonna come sit with us. And hey, what time is it? Oh, it's a little after 8. It's like, oh, well, bye.
Yep.
Knock her overboard. It's
Yep.
like, but it wasn't 9 yet. Well, what does it matter?
Yeah. It's so unceremonious. They just toss her off.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And obviously, all tied up like that, she's probably gonna drown.
Yep.
Uh, and they continue their conversation about the science fiction story, and they pull up to the dock and they tie off. And this time, Paul gets to walk up and
Well, let's pause for a second because the
oh,
conclusion of the science fiction story, the conclusion
yes,
Paul reaches of that, it doesn't matter the difference between reality and fiction. It's all the same. They're both to an extent real. Um, which is sort of what the argument that the filmmakers making is, does it really matter that the fake violence is violence? Isn't it still somewhat real?
yeah,
It's we'll once we get through the plot, we'll talk more about this idea.
yeah. Going back to his comment about Spielberg, yeah, yeah, that all makes tons of sense. So yeah, Paul walks up the lawn and he calls out, "Is anybody awake?" And the lady comes to the door and he reintroduces himself as, "Hey, I'm Paul from yesterday, and uh, Anna and Georg they ran out of eggs and was wondering if we could borrow some." And then we get freeze frame and metal
Paul staring directly at the camera while the song from the beginning plays.
plays almost in its entirety with
Yep.
no credits or anything, just the freeze frame. Then eventually fades to black, and then we get credits.
Yeah. Well, no, it fades to white,
Well,
blinding white
it
light.
darkens and then shifts over to that white,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
yeah, it's black credits on a white background. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
This
funny games.
this movie, man. This movie. Oh my god. What a yeah. It's arguably I think one of the most horrifying movies ever made because it's a movie that is like it's begging you to turn it off at every turn.
Mhm,
It's it's sitting there and it's like, why are you still watching this? Because you have to make it to the end? Like, what's wrong with you?
mhm.
Ah,
It's reminding you at so many points that there is something wrong with you in pushing this forward.
yeah.
What you doing?
And it's uh it's a it's interesting because the director is very clearly, I think like I said at the beginning of the movie, he's a zealot about this. He's an extremist in his views of what violent media does to people, right? And he made this movie in 1997. This was a response to things like, you know, Quentin Tarantino, though you know, that really stylistic violence in the 90s. This is a direct
Mhm.
response to that kind of and it's weirdly like prescient because this was before we had even gotten to like the in the horror genre, things like Eli Roth or, you know, the torture porn stuff.
Yeah.
Because I mean, when I first saw this movie, you know, I saw it in 2007 when the American remake came out, and at that point, it felt like a response to those type of movies. I didn't even realize he had, you know, 10 years before this, before any of that stuff, was already talking about like, what's why are we so obsessed with doing these violent movies? Like, doesn't that have some kind of effect on us? And like the interesting thing is I don't know if he's right. He's got a point to make. I don't know if he's
Mhm.
correct about it. But what I really like about this movie, and to say I like this movie is strong. I don't enjoy the movie, but I enjoy the that gives me ideas, you know. Which is that like people like to talk about how like, oh well, extremism in any form is bad. We don't like extremism. But this is a guy who's an extremist in this idea, and he makes a movie where it's very clear every step of the way that he's thinking about what he's doing. And when you compare that to a lot of people, the Eli Roths of the world, who the thoughts never occurred to them, that interview at the beginning that we talked about,
Mhm.
John Krasinski and Judd Apatow have never thought about that in their entire lives. And as filmmakers, maybe they should be thinking more about the stuff they're putting on screen and what effect that has on people. You know, even if this guy's not right, it's good that somebody is saying something about it.
Yeah, at the very least, he presents an amazingly compelling argument. It's
Yeah.
this is a lot to take in.
Yeah,
It's
it's just
just
so
brutal
much.
beyond belief. In and again, it's not even brutality that you necessarily see. So much is implied, or at least, you infer this brutality from what comes later in the film. But yeah,
Yeah, like you could compare this movie to something like a Park Chan-wook film. Like you seen
okay.
I Saw the Devil?
I know of it, but I have not seen it.
I Saw the Devil has a very like similar sort of idea, and like a lot of Park Chan Wook movies do, where you're sort of watching a character go get their revenge or whatever. At the end of the
Hmm.
movie, it's like, oh, I feel really bad now. I thought I would feel really good when they got their revenge, but I don't. And I really like Park Chan Wook, like Old Boy.
Yeah,
Obviously, Old Boy's fantastic. Everybody loves Old. And
and
it
Thirst
does.
was one of his as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think I've
Yeah.
seen that one, but uh the difference between this and something like Old Boy is old. Old Boy's still a movie.
Yeah.
You're still supposed to enjoy most of Old Boy. The hallway fight scene. Everybody, it's so amazing. It's fun.
Mhm.
There's, even I Saw the Devil, which is another pretty miserable slog of a movie. There's still really cool stuff in that movie that's fun to watch. Like he is still giving you a compelling plot and narrative. The thing that this movie did that was so genius was he knew that if he just told you a regular story, you would miss the point. And so he intentionally subverts the narrative any chance that he gets so that you're just there's nothing fun about this movie. There's nothing enjoyable about the movie.
Yeah. Like you said, it was an essay in film form. Um,
Yeah.
but it definitely makes a person think about what they actually get out of horror films. Like, absolutely. All the slasher films from the 80s, is all about the kills. It's all anybody cared about. What are they going to do to one up the film that came before with these horrible graphic depictions of people being torn from limb to limb, right?
Yeah.
Um, it's what we're here for. And, if there's, some loud music and some tits along the way, then so much the better, right? Well, maybe not.
Maybe not. It's it's really hard to say. Cuz like I said, I don't think I agree 100% with the premise of this film.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely get where they're coming from. I understand that the concerns about the influence of these types of films and so on and so forth. But yeah, going back to Spielberg and the shower scene and how irresponsible he found that. Um, I still think that Spielberg put a very compelling film together that had a whole hell of a lot to say, and you know,
Also,
it,
like, I mean, because he brings up that Spielberg makes that into entertainment when he does that in the scene.
yeah,
But and like he does, there's tension, there's suspense there. You're doing those
sure,
things, but it also puts you in the shoes of that person in that time, and
hmm,
for that is hopefully in your lifetime the closest you will ever come to having that feeling.
absolutely. And I also
And
think it's possible to have those feelings and have some thoughts about that situation and still be entertained.
yeah,
It's
I
I don't know that there's necessarily something wrong with that.
yeah,
Um,
I think the best thing that you can take away from this movie is that you shouldn't view these things so callously, and you shouldn't view them without thinking. And I do think that in a lot of our media right now, it's a lot of stuff where people are doing things without thinking. It's entertainment without the thought of what the actual consequences. There's a lot of that with like MCU movies are like vaguely sort of fascist and vaguely sort
yeah,
of really pro American military and stuff like that. And like, yeah, those movies are really fun. I really enjoy those movies. But
but
maybe we should take a step back and say, hey, you know what? The Avengers are sort of fascist. We should be talking about that a bit more.
hmm
Like I do think that this the big takeaway of this movie is reflect on the things that you view and don't just consume mindlessly. And this is a a real wake up call with a baseball bat, you know?
or a golf club. Yeah,
Yeah.
fuck me.
Yeah.
Oh God. Um, and just other than all the commentary that comes throughout the film, that the questions that it asks, the conversation that it spurs. I mean, you got to talk about the performances too.
Oh my
This,
yeah. Um
eh,
Suzanne Lothar, who plays Anna, is just
she's going through some
incredible.
shit.
The scene where she like begs with Peter to just like leave them alone, like she fully breaks down crying. Is just it's so like she's just
Well, and she goes back
firing
and
on all
forth from
cylinders.
begging for, them to just go away to also begging for them to just go ahead and kill them and get it over with.
Yeah, she it's such. Mm, she 100% nailed the role. Every single thing that the movie requires. I honestly I think that if like there's a different actress in there, and like Naomi Watts in the US version does a really good job as well. I think for the most part, the actors in this movie blow that movie out. I think the performances in this much better because like you really feel every single thing that they're going. And the guy who plays Paul is just what a monster he is in this movie.
Mhm.
Um, in a lot of horror movies and stuff, or even just like it's pretty common thing now. Audiences like their villains to be a bit charismatic. They like to sort of
Mhm.
root for the villain at times and have fun with the villain. Like we brought up Friday the 13th. Jason is the star of those movies. He's the protagonist. He's who you come to see. Um,
That's why a lot of people were so upset with Halloween Ends because Michael Myers is sidelined through so much of that film.
yeah,
It's and yeah, you love to see him kill babysitters. That's the whole point, right? It's
yeah.
but
Not this guy.
no,
Paul,
no.
there is nothing likable about Paul. He's even to his partner, he's a bully.
Mhm.
He bullies everybody around him. He takes it's like a lot of the time they'll do these like, psychopath sort of sadist characters who really, really enjoy putting through people and stuff, and they do it with a smile on their face. You never even really get a sense that Paul like really enjoys it too much. Like, he's never really soaking up and reveling in the torture or anything?
Yeah, it's almost like he's got a job to do, and by God, he's gonna do it. And
Yeah. He takes much more pleasure in knowing that he's making you uncomfortable than he is
mhm,
torturing these people. Yeah. And the way he does the wink, man, it's just perfect.
mhm,
Yeah.
mhm. And Peter, to a large degree, is just kind of along for the ride, but also, I don't know. There's still something about that actor's performance where he goes just back and forth from almost childlike innocence and then very clearly no, not so much.
Yeah.
um
And what's Peter is never shown that he's aware he's in a movie, right?
right.
He's just this other guy, and they set up this almost like redemption arc with him, right? Where they Paul keeps calling him Tubby. He keeps making fun of him, and he's like, "Stop calling me that. Stop calling me that." And
Mhm,
do that scene where Paul goes to chase the kid, and Peter stays behind and stuff. And they set up this like almost like trying to get Peter to turn on Paul. He's just like, no, he's just he's just a murderer. It's yeah, man.
yep.
These are good actors. These are really good actors.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Again, the comment about the lack of score, all you get is diegetic sound.
hmm
That's that works really well for this film.
Yeah,
Knowing that we are a participant in this film, it all makes it much more real. I think they could have done some fun stuff with throwing score in there and playing with it in the hey,
yeah.
we're all on board with this type of way, right? That's a possibility. Did they do that with the remake?
No, the remake is 100% shot for shot the same.
Okay.
Like, they just straight up
That's
remade this movie.
that's what I figured. Just from the little bit that I read about it, that's what it sounded like. So,
Yeah.
um it's it's interesting. Did I read somewhere that the director had always wanted to do this with an English speaking cast
Mhm.
and just
It was
couldn't?
intended This movie was intended to be directed at American audiences. He wanted to shoot it in America with American speaking because he wanted
Okay.
this to be an American film, and they just weren't able to secure the budget and stuff. So he made it in Austria instead. And I guess he was always sort of disappointed that it never really took off in America, that they never really got the audience that the movie was intended for. And yeah, they just sort of were able to put together enough money. This film was um praised, not so much, but there are definitely film critics really like appreciated what the movie was doing and stuff. And it got a bit of an audience. I can't remember when it got put in the Criterion Collection, but I believe like the actors and stuff, like Naomi Watts and Tim Roth, I think is the guy who plays George in the. They all sort of took like really low salaries and stuff, and they got the American done. Yeah, and
Hmm.
it still didn't do great. Um,
Yeah, I
I believe
remember.
it reviewed worse as well.
Mm, I remember people kind of praising Michael Pitt's performance. Um,
Yeah, he's. I always thought that he did a pretty good job, but like now, having seen this version, I think all the actors nail it just perfect.
yeah, yeah, you definitely get a sense of the horrific pain from the actor that plays Georg, but
Yeah,
and then the child actor. Not that I need a kid to be living in fear and terror and pain and everything, but he sells it. Just the wild-eyed look on his face when he's trying to escape.
yeah,
Um, yeah, I buy it. Um, yeah, no, really good cast all the way around. Um, and again, great that it was so contained. This, other than having to actually rent the location, um, I can see how it could be made for very little money. Because there's not a lot going on with this thing other than a
nope,
little bit of set dressing. So yeah.
yeah. They use what they have very very effectively.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's one of those things in filmmaking too that just produces really great movies too.
Yeah,
People just working with what they have and just absolutely maximizing all those little bits and pieces. So
yeah.
yeah, that's cool. I'm interested to hear what else you find out by playing around with the Criterion disc when you get
Yeah,
that.
my Criterion disc is it's out for delivery right now. I'm sitting here. I've been checking it a couple times to
Are,
see if
are
it's
you?
getting closer.
I was just going to ask, are they doing the thing with "You are so many stops away"?
No, I haven't got to that point yet, but they
uh,
probably soon I'll get that like, oh, 5 stops away. But yeah,
hmm
so that's what I'll do tonight is I'll break open that the Criterion booklet, read the little essay there. I believe there's some interviews with Michael Heineke on there, so looking forward to those.
Yeah. Well, that's cool, man. There's probably so much more that could be said about this film, and I'm dying to tear into some of those interviews that you were talking about with the director.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I really don't have too much more to say about this, I guess, until I'm able to digest it a little bit more. It's
Yeah.
This is gonna stick with me for a minute.
Yeah, like I
Um,
said,
and it should.
I watched this in 2007, and it really stuck with me then since I was like a preteen or whatever. This movie's really been eating away at me.
Well, I would have been a senior in high school probably if I had seen this in its original release. But it probably at the time would have been a little bit more highbrow than I was into. But yeah, it's wow. I appreciate the opportunity to dig into this. So I
Yeah, I did
definitely
it's
thank you for
cool
that.
that I got to be here for the first time you watched it. I wasn't aware of that at the time. I picked it, so that's really fun.
Yeah. Well, and like we talked about yesterday, definitely as far as Criterion is concerned, pour one out for the 16 or so people that just got laid off. That's really
Mhm.
unfortunate. I know it's a very small company as it is. I think they only have like 80 employees or something
Yeah.
like that. But yeah, that's awful.
Yeah, it's a
So
damn shame.
buy those
They do
Criterion discs, you
they do
know?
good with the Criterion Collection. Physical media is not what it used to be. Art house film is not what it used to be. Uh, if you're a fan of cinema and you're a fan of letting people make interesting non-blockbuster movies, please support the Criterion Collection. Or did you watch the movie His House?
Not yet, but I did hear about it leaving Netflix and not
Yeah,
having any physical copies anywhere.
it is being taken off. It's a really great movie. It's being taken off Netflix. It might
That's
never see
the
the light of day again.
oof. And that's the really sad thing about the streaming world that we live in now. Um, I've definitely bought physical copies of movies that were released on streaming services if it's something that I really appreciate. You know, I've
Yeah.
got a copy of oh god, I can't think of the director's name. I feel really embarrassed about this right now, but Scare Me. Um,
I don't think
Great
I'm familiar
film
with that one.
about a struggling author who goes to a cabin by a lake to work on his book. He's dealing with a bad breakup, and there's this author that struck it rich with her first book who's in a neighboring cabin. Well, one night the power goes out, and they decide to just hang out and tell scary stories to each other and drink some beer and order some pizza. It is entertaining as
Oh,
hell.
Josh Rubin. I like Josh Rubin quite a
Yes,
bit. Yeah.
he is so good in this movie. And
Oh.
Werewolves Within was a ton of fun too, of course, but this one being basically a cast of four people and
Oh,
mostly
I'll have to
just the
check this
two
out. That looks
leads.
good.
Oh, it's a ton of fun. I absolutely had to buy a disc of that. And Host, the Zoom call horror film from the first year of the
Yep.
pandemic.
Host was pretty
Uh
good.
oh god, it's a very, very effective film and very efficient use of your time. You get all the scares in barely over an hour.
Yeah.
But
But yeah, I know Criterion's done Netflix releases in the past. I really
okay.
hope that they or Shout Factory or somebody picks up His House because that's a really great film that people should watch.
Yeah, I definitely need to give that one a watch. Yeah, I know it's been on my Netflix list for quite some time. I've just never gotten around
Yeah.
to it. So, but yeah, thanks for the reminder for sure because I've seen that all over the place on the internet that it's leaving, and it's just
Yeah.
kind of sad.
Yeah.
Um, but
Uh
that's again where we're kind of at with this stuff.
yeah, the state of movie making is not good if you're not into superhero movies.
Yeah, it's yeah, it's unfortunate. Well,
Yeah.
Brandon, uh, again, I don't have really anything else to say about this film at this point, but if you would like, where can people find you?
They can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Jose Ruckus. They can watch the or listen to the podcast HBO Max MAKS that I do with our friend and previous guest on this show, McKenna May. Um, you came on to review my favorite movie of all time, Blade Runner, on that show, so people should go check that out. That's a
That was
really
a
fun episode.
ton of fun. That was a ton of
Yeah.
fun. Um, yeah, and what should people leave in the comments on this movie?
Oh, uh So I'm gonna issue an apology to anybody that I made watch this movie. I'm sorry that I put you through that, and you can accept my apology in the comments.
There you go. That'll work. That's perfect. Absolutely perfect. Um, well, yeah, again, thanks for coming on, and we will figure something else out in the
Oh,
future.
I've
For
got some
sure.
ideas.
Yeah, I bet you do. But this has been Murders with Mertens, a horror film podcast. Thank you for letting us tickle your ear holes. Please like, share, and subscribe if you are so inclined. I'll be back soon enough with another episode. But until next time, stay spoopy, everyone.